Exodus chapter 4, verse 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." The Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say." But Moses said, "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else." Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, "What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and will be glad to see you." Amen. Amen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It is an honor and a privilege to be standing right here in front of you. If I have red eyes, sorry, Preacher Justice, it's not because of the wine. It's because I'm tired from all the traveling and the overtime I've been working this week. Okay, like I said before, it is an honor and a privilege to be standing right here this morning and to receive such an opportunity to serve God in this way. It's really, really amazing. You know, today's sermon, to me, today, in a sense, it's unique because usually with a sermon, it's always inspired around one idea. But today, it has been inspired around two ideas. One, which was one of the lessons that was preached here at Hilltop earlier on. And the other, it's because of the experience that I go through during the months of April and May. Funny enough, last year, the second lesson that I ever presented was based on last year's experience during the months of April and May. And this one as well, it's the second lesson I've presented, and it is also based on that experience. What I experienced in April and May, for me, it's one of the toughest situations I face at work, because I'll be working consistently overtime from 7 a.m. up until late at night, 11 a.m., 12 a.m., 11 p.m., 12 a.m. And when I reflected on that time I was working overtime, all this time I had been making excuses for myself. I've been making excuses not to read the Bible. I've been making excuses not to pray. And that is because I was defaulted to saying, no, I'm tired. It's too late to do that. But when I reflected, I realized that I actually had the ability to do it all along. And that is what I'm here to talk about today. What is my excuse when it comes to serving God? What is your excuse when it comes to serving God? What is our excuse when it comes to serving God? So today I want to talk about 3 excuses in which we'll find in the books of Exodus chapter 3 and chapter 4. The first excuse, I titled it, "Who am I?" In Exodus chapter 3, just to give a quick background, we read about Moses seeing a bush full of flames, but it wasn't burning at all. When he moved closer, that is when God called to him to go and bring the Israelites out of Egypt. And that is when in verses 11 in chapter 3, Moses says the following: "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" In another version it says, "I am not a great man. How can I be the one to go to Pharaoh and lead the Israelites out of Egypt?" You know, Moses asking God, who is he that he should be the one to bring the people, he should be the one to bring the people out of Egypt, shows that he already sees himself as unfit to be able to do that job. He already sees himself as incapable of doing that job. I don't know why he was thinking like that at that moment. Maybe it's because of the kind of man he was at that moment. And when I was trying to think what would make Moses think maybe he's unfit to do this job, well, maybe it's because he was raised by Pharaoh's daughter, right? In Exodus chapter 2, verses 10, it does say that Pharaoh's daughter took Moses and actually raised him as her own son. So why would you trust someone who was not raised by an Israelite? Why would anyone trust someone who was not raised by an Israelite? Just imagine if maybe the president that was being inaugurated yesterday was from another country. Would we be able to trust him to be able to lead this country if he was from another country and he being the president of the country? Maybe it was because he remembered what was said to him when he tried to resolve the fights between the two Israelites. One of them said, who made Moses a ruler and judge over the Israelites? Maybe it's because of his past. Maybe because he killed a man and he saw himself unfit to be able to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And maybe also it's because Pharaoh wanted to kill him in the end for that. And that's why he went into exile. Moses was not the only character in the Bible who saw himself unfit to serve God. Jeremiah, in Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 6, when God appointed him to be his prophet, he saw himself unfit just because he was young. And then now, how many of us see ourselves unfit to serve God in a particular service at church just because we are young or old? Just because we were not born or raised in the church? Just like maybe Moses was not raised by an Israelite. How many of us see ourselves unfit because of our past lives? We feel we do not deserve to serve God because we do not have a preacher's surname, or we do not come from a family of deacons or elders. How many of us consider ourselves unfit to serve God because of that? How many of us are comparing ourselves with others and already concluding that we are unfit to serve God? We see we cannot do something like some of our brothers and sisters here in the congregation, and then we just automatically rule ourselves out. You know, we think like we cannot preach like our preacher Justice, then we rule ourselves out. And you know how well preacher Justice speaks. Have you ever heard when he says, it doesn't matter? Like, you can even hear the way he says it doesn't matter. It has that thing, you know. But when I try to say it doesn't matter, it even sounds African as well. It is just not the same as how preacher Justice says it. You know, if I could ask Moses a question after he responded to God like that, I would have asked him, did God say you are not great enough to serve him? If I could have asked Jeremiah after he had responded like that, I would have asked him, did God say you are too young to be his prophet? And I am asking you today, did God say you are unfit to serve him because you do not come from a family of preachers or deacons? Did God say you are too young to serve him? Did God say because you were not raised in the church or born in this church, then you cannot serve him at all? Or because you are not like our brother Martin, then you cannot serve him at all in this congregation? If he has not said that at all, why do we consider ourselves unfit to serve Him? After all, what people say about themselves mean nothing. Even what we say about ourselves means nothing. What counts is whether it's what God says about us. The mere fact that He has chosen us, just like He chose Moses, should already be an indication that we are fit to serve Him. It doesn't matter if you are great or inferior to Him. It doesn't matter if you are great or inferior to men, if you have a preacher's surname or not, the kind of past you had. People, what matters is us serving God. Don't let who you think you are stop you from this wonderful opportunity of serving God, of devoting your life to God. It doesn't matter what we think about ourselves. What matters is what God thinks about us. Which brings me to the second excuse. And the second excuse, I titled it, What If? In Exodus chapter 4, verses 1, Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me, or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" Here we find Moses being more concerned about how others will react to his message, instead of focusing on the task that he's supposed to do. I remember this week I was in training, and when I was in training we get to meet also people from other divisions as well. So when I was in training, I saw someone who I'd never seen before since grade 7. That was 2008. She was my former classmate at that time. So when I went up to her to find out if she actually remembered me, she did actually remember me, which was great. And when we were talking, she actually said this to me. She said that she looked at me, she remembered me immediately, but then when she looked at me, it looked like I did not remember her. So she decided that she would not even come to greet me. It was only when I actually went to her and greeted her that we actually talked. But just take a moment and just think about this story carefully. She looked at me and remembered me, but she told herself that I don't remember her, which according to the story, that is not true because I remembered her. I don't even know how she got to that conclusion that I don't remember her, but that is the conclusion that she got to. And see what that kind of thinking created the perfect excuse. So she told herself that I don't remember her, and that created the perfect excuse for her that made sense to her. And that justified the action that she is not going to take the action to actually come and greet me. But when I actually went, but with me, from my perspective, when I saw the girl, she looked familiar and I remembered her. She also looked to me like she didn't remember me. But instead, I wasn't worried about whether she remembers me or not. So I wasn't too concerned about that. So what did I do? I actually walked up to her and greeted her to actually find out if she does remember me or not. Do you see the difference, people? I was not worried about whether she will remember me or not. How many of us today stop ourselves from serving God because we think people will not react positively to what we bring to the table? How many of us conclude that our work, the work that we do here, will not be accepted by our brothers and sisters in Christ. I wonder how many men today were thinking maybe their food will not be good enough for the ladies today here for the fellowship lunch. How many of us worry whether our message will be accepted to everyone here? People, I'm here to tell you the following. Our work has to be acceptable to God, not to men. In simple terms, our goal is to please God and not men. Galatians chapter 6 verse, it's actually Galatians chapter 1 verse 10. Paul says, "For am I now seeking the approval of men or of God? Or am I trying to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ." If my aim is to please Brother Chris here today, when I'm preaching today, then I'm sorry. It means that I'm not a servant of God. If my aim here is to impress some girl so that she takes notice of me when I'm preaching here, it means I am not a servant of God. Amen. If our aim is to please our youth leaders, then it means that we are not servants of God. If our work is to please someone here, it means that we are not servants of God. If our aim is to please God and not men, why are we worrying about whether the work I do for the Lord will be accepted by our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ? You know, we are trying to impress men with the work of God. It's not even men's work, it's God's work. We're trying to impress men with work that doesn't even belong to us. So why are we worrying? Why are we worrying about how others will react to the work we do for God, if our goal is to please God? You know, the book of Galatians chapter 6 verses 10, it says, when we have the opportunity to do good, let us do good to everyone, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. I just want to tell you this morning what this verse doesn't say. It doesn't say when we have seen and when we have the opportunity to do good, we should first check how someone will react to what we do for them before we actually do it. It did not say first, see if Brother Duki will be impressed by what I do, or will find that acceptable before I actually do it. It says when we have the opportunity to do good, let us do good. I can just give a very simple example. An example of greeting someone. You see an opportunity of doing good by, let's say for example, greeting Brother Baxter. But then you remember the kind of person that Brother Baxter is. You see, no, Brother Baxter has never greeted me in my life. You start getting worried. He's the kind of person who doesn't respond well in conversations. So you conclude in your head that, no, it is better if I don't greet him. It is better that I don't greet Brother Baxter because he won't even respond at all. And that's how we create the perfect excuse for ourselves. You know, life is interesting. There are moments where you can see something good that you can do for someone, and you'll be the only one who can see that something good that you can do for someone. But because of this excuse, what if someone reacts in this way? What if this or that happens? Then we talk ourselves out of doing that good deed. Moses thought, what if the people don't believe him or listen to him and say, the Lord did not appear to you? But I can also ask Moses this question. What if the people did believe him and listen to him and say, the Lord did appear to you? It is a matter of perspective, people. Moses could have thought like that, but instead he chose to think negatively. What about us today and the excuses we make? Why do we always choose to think about the worst outcome that can happen instead of thinking about the best outcome that can happen? Why do we choose to think that if I come and stand up here in front, then I'll mess it up, instead of thinking that if I come here in front, then I'll nail it? And why can't we think the best outcome will happen, especially with God on our side? What stops us from thinking the best will happen? Well, only you know the answer to that. And that brings me to my last excuse, which I titled it, I cannot. In the book of Exodus chapter 4 verses 10, it says, Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow in speech and in tongue." You know, Jeremiah also gave the same excuse. Jeremiah chapter 1 verses 6, that he cannot also speak as well. First of all, I just want to point out how ironic this response is. Because just think about it. They're telling God that they cannot speak, but they're actually speaking to God, which it's very interesting. But thinking of Moses' story, God chose him knowing very well that he couldn't speak properly. He chose him knowing very well that he is slow in speech and in tongue as well. And I'm saying to you, God can choose you for something you are also not good at the moment, because He does see the potential in you. So don't let that discourage you from working for God when an opportunity rises to serve God in that specific thing. Let me be like Moses and Jeremiah as well and tell you that I cannot speak as well. I am not eloquent in speech. I am slow in speech and in tongue. But why do I say so? I remember in grade 7, for our assignment we had to present a debate in front of the whole primary school. So in order to determine the order in which the presenters will present the debate, so we were drawing numbers out of the hat. And guess which number I drew? Number 1. I remember after drawing that, I was so scared. And it was also the day of the debate. I was so scared for my life. So when I went up there, and I was the first presenter, and to make it matters even worse, I was even the head boy at that time. So I had a reputation to protect as well. When I went up there, I couldn't speak at all. I couldn't speak so fluently. I was not flowing at all. Even the paper I was holding, you see the paper I'm holding now, it was just shaking like this, and everyone could see it. And that's why I say I cannot speak at all. Fast forward to today, I still cannot speak. And please listen carefully as I say this. I said I cannot speak, but with God I can speak. Moses and Jeremiah at first ruled themselves out before even trying once to speak for God. And how many of us rule ourselves out from serving God before we even try something? Most of us, don't we just tell ourselves that we are not good at anything before we just try and just give it a try and see whether or not you are good at that? But just as you read their stories, and according to what I've read, when you read the stories of Moses and Jeremiah, and according to what I've read, according to me, I think they were actually great speakers. I think they really served the Lord well in something they said that they couldn't do. You know, although Moses had Aaron's help, to pass on the message to Pharaoh. In some situations, you find Pharaoh responding to Moses, and you find actually Moses responding back. And he was actually doing something that he said he couldn't do before. Someone who couldn't speak was actually speaking to Pharaoh. Those examples, you can find them in Exodus chapter 8, verses 9 and 10, and also chapter 9, verses 29. The Bible even says in Deuteronomy chapter 34, verses 10 to 12, that Moses was a great prophet too. Jeremiah was also one who spoke very well for God. You know, it is one thing to try and fail, but it is another to fail without even trying. All I am saying is that let us strive to do our best for God. There's one situation that I left out in my story about how I've been working from 7 to 12 a.m. And that's where I actually learned this lesson, that I've actually been making excuses for myself. There was one day that I'll never forget, and that was on the 2nd of May 2019, because I did something that I never thought I could do before. So that day, I left my place 7 a.m., going to work, got to work 7:30, and I actually got back home at 3:30 in the morning. I remember I gave my all to my work at that day, and every one of my colleagues as well gave their all as well. And the sad part is that when I reflected about how I had the excuse that it was too late to pray, it was too late to read the Bible, or I am too tired to read the Bible, or I am too tired to pray, all God needed from me was just 15 minutes after 12 o'clock to devote that section of my life to Him. I devoted 3 hours that day to my work, but I couldn't even devote 15 minutes after 12 for God. That taught me that I was not even trying my best at all. And the reason I am sharing this with you is to make all of us to start thinking whether we are giving our best or not to God. In everything we do, whether it is praying, attending church services, encouraging each other, getting to know each other, in everything, are we giving our best to God? 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 58. It encourages us to always give ourselves fully to the work of the Lord. And there's a reason for that. Because we always know that our work in the Lord is not in vain. Amen. According to me, we haven't started giving our best if we haven't even tried at all. As I reach the end of this lesson, I just want to share the following points with you. Let's stop thinking for other people, and also let's stop thinking for God when it comes to serving Him. I remember last year, right? I also had this what if excuse during the period of April and May when I was working overtime. So what happened is, because I was still new at that time, I did not want to ask to come to the Bible studies. And guess what? I never even asked at all. Because I was worried, what if my manager thinks I'm actually just trying to run away from work when I'm actually not? But guess what I did this year? This year I said, okay, from 6:30 to 8:30, I'm not available. You can help me after 8:30. And they were like, fine. Like just like that. Well, else last year I was so worried, no, they will reject me and they'll start thinking like this and this and that. And that is what we do to ourselves at times. I remember even last week, I didn't even ask them. I just told them, no, I'm not available now from 6:30 to 8:30. And they were still okay with that. So people, these excuses that we make, we even get to a point where we also start thinking for God as well. And we say God will understand. No, God will not understand.
Amen.
It is you who is understanding for God in that situation.
Amen.
We find ourselves convincing ourselves that God will understand. And we also think for other people. And people, it is not good at all. Like I said before, it is better to try and fail than not to try at all. When you read the book of Exodus chapter 4 verses 13 and 14, actually I should just read this quickly. It says, "But Moses said, 'Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else.' Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses." I just want to say we should be careful not to anger God by refusing to work for Him. And I just also want to emphasize this point that refusing to work for God will not stop God's work.
Yeah. Amen.
That is why it is an honor and a privilege to be working for God.
Amen.
Moses refusing to speak for God, it was quickly resolved. Aaron was there to fill in those shoes. I remember last year, there was a lesson I presented, but I remember during that time I wasn't so sure that I would be back in time to present it because I had went and attended a funeral. So that time I'd asked Brother Tao to just organize a backup for me in case I do not get back. Fortunately, I got back and presented the lesson. But here's the amazing thing. After the lesson, Brother Rivo came to me and actually told me that he was my backup. And actually, we were going to present similar lessons.
Yeah.
And he even told me that the verses that I used, they were also in his lesson as well, some of the verses. And guys, I was mind blown. Whether I was there or not, God wanted that message to be preached. If I'd even refused to preach, that message was still going to be preached.
Amen.
If I even came up with the excuse that I will not be back in time because of the funeral at home, that message was going to be preached. So essentially, God doesn't need me, but yet He makes use of me, which, when you think about it, it is truly humbling. And I just want to say, in all these 3 excuses that Moses gave, in the following verses, God eliminates all his excuses. With the first excuse, in chapter 3, verses 11, God tells Moses that He will be with him, which shows that even though one considers himself unfit, even though one considered himself or herself unfit for the job, with God, one can become fit for the job. With the second excuse, the response, we find it in Exodus chapter 4, verses 2 to 9. And I'm not even going to say anything about this because there was a lesson preached about this. So if you want to find out what the response was, just go to our Mixcloud page and find the lesson. And because that is the perfect response that Moses gave. Perfect response that God gave. With the third excuse, I also want to read the book of Exodus, chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. It says, "The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." God Himself here offered to help Moses speak and teach him what to say. And I'm sure here, people, there are brothers and sisters here at Hilltop who are willing to teach us to nurture our gifts and actually teach us to serve the Lord. So I have this question for you. What excuse do we still have here at Hilltop that will stop us from serving God? And just like God eliminated all of Moses' excuses, Hilltop has also eliminated all of our excuses. Well, if you don't have transport to go to church, I think you need to join the transporters group. For any service, even on Friday services for the youth late at night, there is transport available.
Amen.
You don't have a gathering for a meeting? How many times have we heard the phrase, talk to your leaders about that? Can't attend Bible studies because you live in Midrand and it's far?
Hallelujah.
Well, my car is always empty from Midrand to Joburg every Wednesday. It's waiting for people to fill that car up. You missed Wednesday or Sunday Bible studies or lessons? Well, we have a Mixcloud page and a YouTube page for that. So I ask people again, what excuse do we have here at Hilltop that will stop us from serving God? The answer is one, and I summarized it in one perfect sentence, and which also summarizes the whole lesson as well. It will be the last thing I say before I sit down. And this is the answer. Only you can excuse yourself from serving God.